The tiny nation of Israel always seems to be in the news, and often it's being criticized. What is it about this nation that has the attention of the world? Is it something spiritual? And many Christians believe that is the case. Our guest today joins us from Israel, Yael Eckstein. She is the president of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Their TV program, Christians and Jews, airs right here on Miracle Channel on Sunday afternoons at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. So welcome, Yael, to Bridge City News. Good to have you with us.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here with you.
You bet. Well, first of all, can you tell us, Yael, for any viewers not familiar with your organization, tell us a bit about International Fellowship of Christians and Jews.
Okay, well, the fellowship was founded around 37 years ago by my father, Rabbi Yael Eckstein, and it was started as an organization whose vision was to really bridge the Jewish and Christian communities and shared vision, brotherhood, communication, love for the first time in 2,000 years. And what it turned into was an organization that's really partnering with God to bring biblical prophecy to fruition and fulfill the biblical mandate to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, shelter the poor. Wherever you throw a stone in Israel, you'll see the fellowship, which represents Christians who stand with Israel.
That's really interesting. Now, sadly, your father, Yael, died earlier this year. Now, has it been difficult for you to pick up where he left off?
Well, one of the first questions people asked me after my father passed away, and I was voted president elect by the board around a year before he passed away suddenly. And so immediately I filled those shoes, and people said, Yael, you have very big shoes to fill. Do you think you're going to be able to do it? And I said, well, his feet were a lot bigger than mine, so I'm not going to try to fill his shoes. I'm going to just try to wear my own. And so it's definitely been a journey of really carrying on my father's mission. That I worked side by side with my father for over 15 years. And so from the side of the organization and carrying on the mission and the vision, I feel more than prepared. But on the other side of losing a father, that's something you're never prepared for.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's a process. It's ongoing, isn't it? But on the other hand, again, you've had quite a bit of experience working side by side with your dad, so this is not new to you. Could you tell us how do you go about building bridges with Christians? And what does that involve, practically speaking?
Well, it's something spiritual. The fellowship isn't just an organization, a philanthropic organization that's saving lives. We're doing that too, but it's rooted in spirituality. We have so many of the same values, of the same vision, of the same love for Israel, the love for the Bible. What Christians say is that we're grafted onto the rich olive tree of Israel. And so, for any Christian who studies the Bible and studies both the New and Old Testament, Israel is fundamental to their faith. And so the fellowship is really a conduit that Christians can use to express that love, to be part of this biblical prophecy coming to fruition. And it's a bridge of understanding that we're different. God created us different. But he also commanded us to love our neighbor like ourselves. What's the key
Hmm.
characteristic of a neighbor? That they're different than you. And so what the fellowship is doing is saying Christians and Jews have 99% of things in common. You even see Judeo-Christian values that were put in that same pot of values for thousands of years. But it took thousands of years until we actually were able to step up and say, in Psalms, King David said, Hine ma tovu manaim shevet achim gam yachad, how good and pleasant it is when brethren dwell together in peace. This is what God was waiting for. And now we're saying we're going to focus on what brings us together, what makes us similar, more than what tears us apart and the
Hmm.
differences.
Yeah, it's better to focus on that, I think, as well, for sure. And of course, we need to remember that Jesus was born into a Jewish family. That's kind of key, isn't it? I mean, tell me, how many Jews have now returned to their homeland, making Aliyah? Do you have any ballpark numbers? I know it's a fairly high number, isn't it?
Well, the fellowship has helped over 180,000 Jews make Aliyah from non-Western countries. So this is from the biblical land of the north of the former Soviet Union and Russia. We've helped return two lost tribes to Israel, the tribe of Dan and Manasseh from Ethiopia and India. That I
Wow.
believe that Yeah, it's awesome things happening. I believe that the reason why God has blessed this ministry is because we are standing together. When we stand together, God brings biblical prophecy to fruition. So it's truly awesome to see.
Yeah, it is quite amazing when you look at some of the prophecies and you see, man, why are so many people coming, back to their homeland? Let me ask you, why do you feel it's so important for Jews to return to Israel? Is it mainly because of the prophecies that need to be fulfilled, essentially?
Well, I think it's a few things. I think that the prophets saw what we call these end of days when Jews will be threatened and killed and targeted all across the world. It's my grandfather is a Holocaust survivor. We're not even, uh, we still have Holocaust survivors alive today. I think the prophets saw that Jews are going to be targeted, Jews are going to be killed and threatened, that unless they have a homeland, unless they come back to the land of Israel, the Jews won't exist. And so this is part of God's greater plan that's both physical, that we're coming home to escape anti Semitism, persecution, but it's also spiritual, that this is part of God's plan. God made a promise that the Jewish people would come home, the ingathering of the nations from all four corners of the earth. And it's something that people often said was impossible, that after 2,000 years of the Jewish people still being exiled from their land, the native tongue of Hebrew not being spoken, people said that can't happen. But indeed, God, whatever God says and wills can happen. And so in an instant, the nation of Israel was rebuilt, and in an instant, the holy tongue of Hebrew was reintroduced to the world through Israel.
Yeah, it's fascinating. A big part of what you do is providing for Jews who are in need, often living in countries where there is a fair bit of anti Semitism. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, well, in the former Soviet Union, that's where there are so many Holocaust survivors and orphans that have no support network. And so the fellowship is there with basic needs, just as the Bible outlines, to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, to shelter the homeless, to care for the elderly and the orphans. And that's what the fellowship is doing specifically there in the former Soviet Union, telling the Jewish people. Yes, it might be the fact that 70% of Nazis identified as being Christians. But today there's a very different reality. And these are Christians who are coming in to save your life, to give you basic needs when you're on your last piece of bread, that you don't have any heat. These are Christians who are expressing their love, real Christians who are acting Christ like, not like the Nazis, to just give them that hope, that there is hope for the future, that uh, there's remorse, there's friendship, there's love, that there is a generation of Christians who are not rejecting the Jewish people, but standing passionately and faithfully with the Jewish people.
Right, because there's a history behind that, of course, and sometimes it's hard to get rid of that history and embrace, the new reality. Certainly within evangelical Christianity, yeah, we're friends, right? So we want the best for each other, and so this is ongoing within the countries themselves. Let's say whether you're in the Ukraine, I know they've got a war happening there, and on the one side of the country, and Russia, there's people, in poverty. So you're helping within the country itself. Are you also helping those people in some cases to actually help them afford to fly to Israel as well?
Yes, that is our main goal. Anybody who wants to come to Israel, we have a whole list that as soon as we get a donation, which thank God are even hundreds a day sometimes, we bring that person home. We have lists of thousands of people, though. So our first priority is bringing them home to Israel. And we have people landing every single day in Israel and Aliyah, moving here from those countries every day, even from places like Venezuela and places
Isn't
at risk in South
really?
America.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does the government itself then have a program to help these newcomers and get established, and then you also assist with that as well?
That's exactly it. So basically, we bring these Jewish people home to Israel, but we don't give them a bottle of water and say, okay, good luck with your new life. Biblical prophecy fulfilled. We did our part. No, we set up that they have very often actually a job set up before they even move to Israel, that we conduct Skype interviews and connect the new immigrants with businesses in Israel that are looking for employees. So many of them already land with a job. We connect a volunteer who speaks their language and already went through this process to follow them for 6 months just to explain to them how to register their kids for school, how to sign up for a bank account, where the nearest grocery store is. Things are very overwhelming for new immigrants that don't speak the language. And one of the things that these volunteers do as well is let them know that they are accessible for government aid as well, to teach them how to speak Hebrew, for example, and make sure that they apply and get all those benefits. So it's really kind of a big brother type of program that's most effective and most cost effective.
May I ask about the general population of Israel? Are they getting weary? Do they get kind of a tired of, oh man, all these people coming back? Or is there a general consensus? We want to see more of this. We're glad they're coming back to Israel. What's the sense?
Well, I was just in America this summer for a few weeks, and what I saw was that the hottest topic right now of debate, and that's unfortunately tearing people apart, is the issue of immigration. And I realized that Israel is the only country in the world, I think, that not only brings in certain amount of immigrants, but that celebrates every single immigrant who wants to come home, that they're able to. Anyone who is Jewish, they are allowed to make aliyah, and by the time they leave the airport, they have citizenship. No tests, no
Wow.
process of 6 months or a year. That as soon as any Jewish person who wants to move to Israel wants to move to Israel, they get 100% citizenship immediately. And not only that, when they land in Israel, every single flight, which is every single day that the fellowship brings to Israel from different countries, has hundreds of volunteers who are at the airport singing and dancing and holding up signs and giving them hugs. And we have the press here who's excited to welcome them in and features their stories. So it's very unique. And I think it's because, like I said, it's prophetic.
That is very, very interesting. Now, thanks for sharing that. Now, much of your financial support does come from evangelical Christians. And one of your father's dreams, I understand, was to build an international center for Christian outreach in Jerusalem to connect with the many Christians who visit Israel each year. How is that coming along?
Thank God it's coming along amazing. I always say my father was a visionary, and in order to be a visionary, you have to do things without it necessarily making sense. That he started the fellowship when everyone said it's impossible to bridge Jews and Christians after 2,000 years. Come on, what do you think you're doing? And it was a calling from God that he believed in, and therefore God blessed it. And it's very similar with this building. My father, one of his last things that he said before he passed away is we need a building, a presence, a home in Jerusalem for Christian visitors. And after he passed away, we started looking into the situation for Christian tourists, and we realized that there are 2.2 million Christians from around the world who come to Israel every single year. That is half of all the tourists to Israel. And they're coming from places like China and South America, places like Korea and America and Canada, all over the world. And they're coming to Israel, and there's no one who is educating them on modern Israel. They're seeing the biblical holy sites, but there's no one bringing that forward to modern Israel today and how they can be goodwill ambassadors for Israel. And what that means is that they're seeing the holy sites, but they're still very open to being influenced by BDS and Christ at the Checkpoint, who are trying to tear apart modern Israel and destroy modern Israel. And so, what we're doing in this center is actually taking these 2.2 million Christians each year who are visiting Israel and having this amazing spiritual experience, and we're educating them on how they can go back to their homes and be ambassadors for Israel.
Okay, that is very interesting. Well, good on your father and for you for continuing that as well. Can you briefly comment on this growing boycott Israel movement we are seeing in the Western world? Any thoughts on that? I mean, Israel is, I guess, often viewed as the bully on the block, but the neighborhood that Israel lives in is an interesting one.
Yeah, Israel is a nation of God, and we are an army of God. And in fact, we take all measures to protect Israel, but we take such extreme measures to protect the lives of our enemies as well that the U.S. Army even said, why are you setting standards that we can't keep up with? For example, if we know that there's a terrorist in a building in the Gaza Strip, Israel doesn't just go and bomb the building, which most countries were if they knew there was a terrorist planning an attack on their soil and civilians. Israel first sends what they call a knock on the roof, a fake bomb on the roof, roof and flyers saying, everyone evacuate this building. We're about to destroy it because of the terror activity. So they have an opportunity to leave. Israel is painted in a bad light. And I think that's really because of the root of anti Semitism. I think Israel's enemies have tried to destroy us militarily and it hasn't worked. They've tried the intifada of blowing up buses and
Right.
coffee shops. It hasn't worked. They've tried surprise wars. It hasn't worked to destroy us. And that now I think it's a war of information, that what they're trying to do
Hmm.
is give all of the anti-Semites in the world a politically correct way to be against Israel and take a part in destroying Israel without actually having to be so controversial. And I always say, I think we're living in very unique times. There's always been anti-Semitism in the world. There's
Right.
never been a time that there wasn't anti-Semitism. But today we have millions of Christians who stand with Israel. That's the difference. We're not alone.
Okay. I'm running out of time here, and I know you want people to support what you're doing there, and you want people here to pray for Israel and for organizations like yours who are actively involved in helping people in need. And again, that's just a biblical principle we see in the Old Testament and the New Testament as well. So thank you so much, Yael, for just sharing what you're doing there.
Thank you. Thank you for your interest, and to all of your amazing holy followers and viewers for just staying up to date. The first thing is education. Only after education and prayer can we get into the area of action.
All right. Thank you, Yael. Yael Eckstein is president of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. You can see that program as well, Christians and Jews, right here on Miracle Channel, 5 p.m. Mountain Time on Sunday afternoons.